lesson we are learning today is the 9-2 lesson. It's pretty easy. All right, because you've seen it before. It's measures of center and spread. So like measures of center, that's like mean, median. Measures of spread, that would be like IQR, standard deviation, range. So that's what we're doing today. You should be able to know the difference between measures of center and spread. And there's a lot of like terms on your note page, but the ones that you will be tested on are the ones I listed here, which is about all of them, basically. You need to be able to identify your maximum value, your minimum value, your lower quartile, your median, your upper quartile, your interquartile range, mean, and median. So all of that you will see on your test that you're taking next Friday. I'm recording now, I'll link it in the slides, but here's another video that I found of another teacher explaining it. Maybe you like the way she explains it better. You can skip the part about how to calculate standard deviation. I will not test you on that, it's pretty tedious, but you just need to know like what standard deviation is. The practice you just picked up, it's all problems assigned, because I think it's like 7 or 8, so all the problems. And you'll have an exit ticket tomorrow on this lesson, and I'll probably throw in some stuff from 9-1 as well, because we didn't have an exit ticket for that one. So just be aware, it's going to be like a longer exit ticket for that. But that you'll do tomorrow during class time. Speaking of tomorrow, I will not be here tomorrow, so that's what these instructions are. But whether you are in here or in the auditorium, you're still responsible for completing these things. So this is also posted in school. And you have all the papers for it today. First, you will complete your 9-2 practice, then your 9-2 exit ticket. Any other missing work from the purple folders, because that deadline is next Friday. And then if you finish all that, or maybe you finish the 9-2 practice today and you finish early tomorrow, you're welcome to get ahead and start the 9-3 practice, which you guys also picked up. So the 9-3 practice, like the lesson, we have not covered yet, but it's not hard. All right, stuff you've seen before, you can look over the notes in Schoology and be able to do the practice. So there's that. Any questions? So I'm supposed to have a sub, but sometimes we make that sub go to the auditorium. Regardless, you guys all have the papers. Even the absent people today can just look it up in Schoology and do it on their own paper, so no excuses. Now on to the lesson. All right, so for the first blank that you are going to fill in, that is measures of center. All right, measures of center are used to represent a central or typical value of a data set. So that's usually a mean or median. Measures of spread, so this next blank, are used to describe the consistency of the data values. So that would be like range, interquartile range, or standard deviation. So measures of center is like what number is most of the data centered around. Measures of spread is how far away do the data points differ from each other. So like if you're talking about temperatures over the summer, I would say like the measures of spread would be pretty small. But if you're talking about temperatures like in the winter here in Arizona, sometimes you wake up and it's like 30 degrees, but then it goes all the way up to like 75, like it's weird. So Just keep that in mind. That is how far away they're different from each other for measure of spread. The basic definitions for each one we'll go over. So mean, what's another word for the mean? The average, good. So that is, definition is going to be the average of the values. So fill that in. The average of the values. All right, and when I'm taking the average of something, what am I doing? So you take the sum of the values. Yes, that is the number that'll go on top of your fraction. What goes on the bottom of the fraction? Yes, the amount of numbers that you added. So the number of values in your data set. So like say I was taking a survey of your guys' shoe sizes and I listed them up here. So like 7, 7, 7.5, 10, 10.5, right? I would add all those numbers together and then divide it by however many numbers I added together. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers. So we divided by 5. The median. What is the median? Anyone remember? The middle value. All right, I know some of you are starting to take your permit tests. At least that's what we were talking about in one of my other classes. You may or may not know this, but that thing that divides the road is called a median. So the middle or the middle value. You do need to make sure that the numbers are in numerical order. So make sure to put values in numerical order. So make sure values are in numerical order. In this box, I do want you to put Q2, because that's also what we call the median for short. We'll talk more about it later, but put that in the box. So those are our measures of center, our typical values. What's the mode? What word does mode sound like? Most. So it's the most occurring value or values. The most occurring value or values. So in that example I gave you up here, what would be my mode? 7, right? 7 shows up twice. No other number shows up more than twice, so that's my mode. Can I have more than one mode? Yes. Like say I add another number to this data set, say I add the number 10. Well, now I have 2 modes. I have 7 and 10 because they both show up twice. All right, lower extreme is basically just a fancy word for saying the smallest value. All right, the smallest value. That is your minimum. Don't get intimidated by that word. It's just asking for your minimum. Your upper extreme would be the biggest value, the largest value, your maximum. All right, now let's talk about lower quartile. So that is going to be the median of the lower half. the median of the lower half. And then in this box, put Q1, so that's also what we call the lower quartile. Middle number of the lower half. Upper quartile would be the median of the upper half. And we're going to call this one Q3. Make sure you know upper quartile is your Q3. So then your range, that's one of the measures of spread. That, does anyone remember what the range is?
Subtract the smallest number in the set from the biggest number.
Good. So it's your maximum minus your minimum. That tells you basically where your data, like how far away your smallest number is from your biggest number, and that's important sometimes. Your interquartile range, we also call it IQR, so that one's probably new to you, or maybe not. But your interquartile range is going to be your Q3 minus your Q1. So it's your upper quartile minus your lower quartile. All right, any questions about this vocabulary? Anyone miss any of them? Do you need me to go back to one? All right, so then we also have standard deviation. That is, it has a big formula, right? It's right over here. It's kind of tedious to find the standard deviation. Usually we'll spend like a whole day on it. But you don't really need to know it for this upcoming test. What you do need to know about it is that it's a measure of spread. So it's a measure of spread slash variability. Measure of spread slash variability. Questions? All right, so that's the definition of all of them. Now let's actually identify the value of it in a data set. So first, and I'm just going to kind of start from the list and keep working my way to the right. First, it wants us to find the mean. How do you find the mean? Good. Add up all the numbers. So take out your Chromebook or calculator, whatever you use to calculate things, all of you. All right, so what is the sum of those values? Anyone get something different? All right, and how do I know what I divided by? However many numbers are in the data set. So count them. How many numbers do we have?
10.
10. So then my mean or my average is 130 divided by 10, which is 13. Questions on that one? All right, then next we need to find the median. So the middle number. Can I just start like crossing out numbers like this? And why not?
It's going to be in numerical order.
Has to be a numerical order first. So let's do that. I'll squeeze it in over here. What number would come first?
4.
And as I do this, I always kind of cross them off. It makes them easier to see. What number would come next? Good, so there's multiple 4s. Make sure you get all of them. Then what? How many of them?
3.
Good. What number would come next?
14,
Then,
15,
then,
16.
I'm probably gonna have to slide this all over. Give me a second. But then yes. And then just sure that you have all the values. So if I started with 10, make sure you have 10 when you rewrote them. Which I did. All right, now for the median, start from the left. I underline them so that I can still see the numbers because I'll still need these numbers later. But like start from the left, start from the right, and just kind of underline until you can identify your middle number. Or sometimes it's middle 2 numbers, like in this case. Since I had an even number of data points, well, that gives me 2 numbers in the middle. Does that mean that they're both my median? What do I do? You do the average of them. When you have 2 numbers in the middle, take the average of them. So that means adding them together and then dividing it by however many you added. So what number would go on the bottom? 2. What's 10 plus 14?
24.
What's 24 divided by 2?
12.
So our median is 12. You can kind of think of it as like the middle point between these 2 numbers too. So my median is actually here, it's 12. What's my mode? 10. Can it also be 4? No, because 4 only shows up twice, 10 shows up 3 times. 10 is the only mode. What is my lower extreme? So my minimum, good. What's my upper extreme? I'm gonna skip upper and lower quartile for a second. Let's do the range. What's the formula for range? So then I need to do 25 minus 4, my maximum minus my minimum, which is
21.
21 for the range. Everyone with me so far? All right, now these ones over here are a little more new, so let's talk about those. When I have an even number of data points and my median ends up being between these 2 middle numbers, when I'm looking for my middle number of say like my lower half, make sure that you, when you do your like left and right, that you cross out one of the middle numbers, if that makes sense. Like don't just skip it. Go left, right, my lower quartile, my Q1 is 10. What's my upper quartile? 16, good. So like this, left, right. 16 is my upper quartile or my Q3. And then for my interquartile range, my IQR for short, what's that formula?
Q3 minus Q1.
Good. What did we say Q3 was?
16.
What did we say Q1 was?
10.
What's 16 minus 10?
6.
Good. Questions on how we found any of these? All right, so are we ready to try the first one on the back? All right, so try this first one, the number 2. And we'll go over it in about 2 minutes. I'm gonna leave it on this page so that way you guys can see this example. Niall scored these different scores on his 6th geography test. First, put the data in numerical order. So what does numerical order mean? From least to greatest. So what number would go first? And then, so before we get into these answers, would you say that this data has a lot of variability? Because what does variability mean? Like having consistent values would mean that it's less variable. If it had values kind of all over the place, it's more variable. So it looks like he consistently gets a C, and one time he got an A. So just kind of keep in mind when it asks about variability. For the mean, you had to add all those numbers together. What did you get when you added them together? 456, and then you needed to divide it by however many numbers there were, which was,
6.
so my mean is,
76.
good, questions on that? The median, you go left, right, until you get either a middle number or middle two numbers, then you take the average of those. So in this case, what is your median?
72 and 73.
It should only be one number.
72.
72 and a half is your median. All right, so add them together, divide it by 2. You can also kind of think of it as the midpoint between those two numbers, which is 72.5. But that's what you do when you have two numbers in the middle. All right, the range. What's my formula for range? So my maximum number is, my minimum is, what's the difference? 26 for the range. IQR, that one's like the more tricky one. What's the formula for IQR?
Q3 minus Q1.
So we need to identify Q3 and Q1. Let's start with Q3. What's my Q3? Good. So when your median is in the middle, like between two numbers, make sure that you include these middle numbers in your crossing out. So my Q3 is 74 minus my Q1, which is what? Good. This is my middle number of the lower half. So then what is 74 minus 71? 3. So sometimes it's better to use the IQR versus the range, because if you just looked at the range, you might think like, wow, his scores are all over the place. But when you look at the IQR, you see that they're actually pretty consistent. There's just like one outlier, right? So there you go. Questions? All right, we'll do the next one together because it's an odd number of values. So Raul recorded the following golf scores in his last 7 games. First, we need to put them in order. What number would come first?
81.
And then, all right, let me cross them out. What comes next? Then, and then
94.
and then another 94. So you should have 7 totals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Always make sure of that because it'll mess up everything else if you don't. So for the mean, that's pretty the same process. Add them all together. And then we're dividing by 7 this time. Why? Because there's 7 numbers that we're adding together. So add them together and tell me what you get. 625. What's 625 divided by 7?
It's just like that's a bunch of decimals.
What, round it to the 10th. Tenth would be just one spot after the decimal. So 89.3. Usually it'll specify what to round to. I just rounded to the 10th, but it usually will specify. So there you go. The mean can be a decimal. For the median, now this one It's slightly different because you won't have two numbers in the middle, right? What's my middle number? 90. So left, right, there's only one number in the middle this time, which is 90. No having to take the average of anything this time. For the range, what's my maximum?
94,
Minus my minimum, what's my minimum?
81,
What's 94 minus 81?
30.
Good, looking good so far. All right, now the IQR. Now, I'm sure maybe you probably could have figured this out, but it's always a question. If we cross out the middle number when we're doing like our left, right. When you just have one number in the middle, you don't include it in your crossing out. So when I'm finding the median of my lower half, it's left, right. This is my median of my lower half. This is my Q1. Make sense? What's my Q3? 94. So left, right, don't cross out your Q2 when there's only one number there. 94 is my Q3. So then plug that into your IQR formula. So Q3 minus Q1, what's 94 minus 84? 10. Questions on this one? So number 4, I'll have you guys try. So this is more like what you'll see on a test. They love to say, here's a data set. How will adding or removing a particular number affect the data set? Sometimes you can say like it'll increase, it'll decrease, blah, 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 without having to do any calculation. Sometimes you just have to check. So we'll practice that in here. So try number 4, since it's a little longer, I'll give you like 4 minutes. If you finish early, make sure your 9-1 practice is done, because that's the one I'm checking today. And then if that's already done, because you're supposed to have it already done, start your 9-2 practice. That the mean and median will most likely increase. Will it happen all the time? No. Like if we have a lot of the same numbers in the middle, like the median might not change at all. But usually if you're adding a bigger number to the data sets, it will increase the mean. Because you're adding a bigger number to the top and just 1 to the bottom of the fraction. So that you can usually assume without even doing any calculations. If you did the calculations, here's the difference. So the mean was 4.3. After adding 10, the mean was 5. So the mean increased. For the median, it also increased. That one I'd probably just have to check. So like here it is with 10 added in the mix. Before 10 was added in the mix. Let me kind of redraw that.
Sorry for the interruption. Can I please have the AP Calculus students who turned in their waivers, please meet your bus behind C building. You are now dismissed to attend your field trip. Once again, AP Calculus students who turned in their waivers, please meet behind.
All right. So here's the median before adding 10 to the data set. So when you added 10, now we have 2 numbers in the middle. You take the average of them. When we don't, it's just the 4. All right, the range would obviously increase if you're increasing the maximum value, right? Because before it was 7 minus 2, which is 5. Now it's 10 minus 2, which is 8. So changing the maximum or the minimum would obviously affect the range. The IQR though, may or may not, that one you kind of just have to check. So when my median is in between the 2 numbers, remember that you use your cross out the middle number, you'll have to take the average of this for your Q1. Same thing over here. Take the average of the 2 7s, you get 7 for your Q3. Over here, don't include the middle number when it's just 1 in the middle. All right, 2 was my Q1, my Q3 was 7. So then when we subtract those, there is less variability the first time. Then over here, there's more variability, but then again, it wasn't enough. You just have to kind of test this one out on your own. So questions? All right, so that's it for the lesson. Remember, if you didn't finish your 9-1 practice, that's the one I'm checking today, so finish that one first. Your 9-2 practice, I won't check until Friday, so get that done.